Hypersigils, the best way of taking something really 80s, which is sigil magic, and making it really 90s by putting the word hyper in front of it. I was asked on a live stream this weekend whether hypersigil should be included in the ultimate Sigil Magic course that just finished up here on YouTube. You can grab all of it here. I thought about it, and the answer is kind of. We're going to do this as a bonus module for the Ultimate Sigil Magic course that also functions as a standalone video that answers the question, are hypersigils still a thing? Yes and no. And I forgot my little stick to go with the camera, so I'm going to be holding it like this. It's got that after-school vibe. In Australia, obviously, when you finish up school, it's the end of the year, which is high summer. And because we're talking about 90s stuff, I wore my bucket hat. And I'm not at all joking about the term being 90s, right? I mean, think about the ultimate in 90s fashion wear, early 90s, I suppose, which is hypercolor. Those beautiful t-shirts that, you know, would change color if you touch people. And if it wasn't for the hideous chemical burns that they made, we'd presumably all still be wearing them. But also like information superhighway, hypercut, you know, it's that real approaching millennium energy. The term hypersigil is owed, oh, I can hear dogs in the background, that's awesome, belongs or originates with legendary and immensely talented, I guess, comic artist, comic writer, chaos magician, Grant Morrison. And Morrison coined this term, hypersigil, interslice hypercolor, to wrap his head around something that happened to him on psychedelic mushrooms in Nepal. And I'm going to drop a clip from the 2010 Grant Morrison documentary here where he explains a little bit about what's going on.
There was the stairs there, which was 365 steps, and if you could climb them on one breath, then you were guaranteed enlightenment. We got some tickets for Kathmandu and left. And we did the thing, so we ran up the stairs, no problem. So we figured that's it, enlightened in this life. The job is done. A couple of days later, I was sitting on the top of the Vajra hotel. I was actually writing the instructions for the Invisibles when the experience happened. There is a break that says, shit, I've just gone away and the most profound experience of my life has happened. But the temple began to look like a machine. So it was pumping this spiritual energy and it was getting quite profound. These things came out of the wall, like these silvery blob guys were saying, where do you want to go? And the first thing I could think of was Alpha Centauri. And suddenly there was this collapsing Stargate kind of effect and I wasn't in my body anymore. There was 3 suns. There was a planet that was kind of blue and green. So they said, right, we're going to take you off the surface of the space-time continuum. Ready for this one? And I got peeled off 4 dimensions of space and time. I said, we'll show you what's going on. What we do is we create universes because only in time can you grow things. Things here are eternal, so we can't make new ones unless we build time.
In the second to last Invisibles, we see Jack walking along, leaving a trail of after images that's him through time, stretching back all the way through his life to pull out further, and you see every single human life represented this way, not only in the present, but in the past. We pull even further back, and now we're outside of time. We see time represented as a 4-dimensional crystalline structure.
In order to get here today, you had to be yesterday. And you also had to be 10 years old and 9 years old and 5 years old, and everybody had to wind their way back through, down into their mother. And then the mother winds her way back into her mother, and the whole thing connects as one continuous activity. And I spent the 6 years afterwards trying to probe what that meant and what had just happened, what was going on in my brains, through the Invisibles.
When he's talking about alien abduction, it's more of a metaphor of an awakening, of an awareness, of a sense of the layers of reality. And I think that's the same experience that we can get from reading his comic.
So when he was taken out of time, which is a very shamanic thing to have happen. In my healing tradition, we work outside of time for this very reason. And he sees these snaking moment by moment lines of human lives and so on. The origin of the term hypersigil came from that beautiful perceptual awareness of being able to be in the storyteller, or be in the story, but be the storyteller. To almost like not be your story is the way my teacher Alberto Violdo talks about it. So for Morrison, a hypersigil is a story that the storyteller steps into intentionally as a way of altering future conditions. And this is how he came to understand all the unusual things that happened to him as he was creating, in particular, the main character of the Invisibles, King Mob. He did actually explore some of the other ones, like in his cool phase, which is what he called it. I'm not throwing shade. And he was living in Soho, and he was experimenting with drag and so on. And there's some, I guess, trans characters in the Invisibles that the heart's in the right place. We might describe that stuff a little bit differently these days. Nevertheless, most importantly, he decided intentionally to be cool, like King Mob was. And that's like the global jet set, be charming, be a hit with the ladies, all that kind of like powerful, exciting main character energy almost means of being in the world. And it worked, right? So in the 90s, you actually could have not just a successful, but a wealthy life as a comic creator. That's not the case anymore. It's largely the comics industry's fault, frankly, by pitching 1.5 decades of shit. Doesn't matter. At the time, he had British invasion adjacent coolness and a bunch of money and young and charming, and stepped into the King Mob stuff. And that global fun jet set life worked. He was intentionally doing it. And then, as he tells it, he starts writing, as you have to do with a comic, bad things happening to King Mob. And there's in fact another clip from that documentary where he explains some of that I will drop in now.
I was living it, I'd become the character, I was wearing the clothes, I was going to the places, I was doing the things, I was doing the rituals, I was hanging out with the gods, and then putting it back in the comic, and then being affected by what was in the comic. So yeah, in terms of reality, that one was the actual deal, that one was bringing me to the verge of death.
When Grant was working on The Invisibles, he got sick right around the time that character got sick.
Just after King Mob had been convinced by the bad guys that he'd been given a necrotizing fasciitis bacteria that was eating through his face, I suddenly get this huge boil on my face, and within 3 days it's enormous, distorted my entire features.
I remember him saying, "Steve, look at this," and he pulled his ear back, and there was this hideous kind of green, crusty kind of crater thing behind his ear, and he'd got no idea what it was.
I was sweating constantly, I was getting into fevers and having these shakes and rigors, and then freezing. I just couldn't get up anymore, and I lay in front of the fireplace in my house.
I mean, he thought he was going to die. I mean, he was broken down in tears, and he was delirious, man, delirious.
And suddenly this giant column of light comes through the door. I mean, bear in mind that I'm hallucinating, but this was one of the most amazing hallucinations I've ever had. And it's Jesus. The first thing he said, which is the thing I put in the comic, just this voice suddenly announced itself. "I am not the God of your fathers, I am the hidden stone that breaks all hearts." So then he's saying to me, "Okay, you're about to die now, but you don't have to die." And I said, "Look, I really don't want to die. What do I have to do?" And he said, "Well, if you want to stay here, you have to work for us. You have to spread the light," whatever that means.
There's sequences in those issues of The Invisibles that came out of the hallucinatory experiences he had on his sickbed.
And it really felt like I'd been through something that very closely attached to the comic. That was my shamanic experience, that was my trial, my encounter with death, I'd forced all my characters to go through.
It's not like, you do a comic where George Bush dies and he's going to keel over in his bed or something. But you write a comic book where you get sick, and who knows?
When he told me this story, it was very profound, and I could see in his eyes and I could see in his reactions, it had been a very real experience for him to have survived.
It was really obvious to me then that what I was doing was having a much wider effect and deeper implications in my own life.
There was a disinformation retreat weekend at the Omega Institute in upstate New York, and somebody brought a guitar. And at one point, Grant gave probably a 40-minute impromptu concert.
I'm singing for these gorgeous girls and admiring boys, and I was just like, there he goes. There's the totally self-expressive human, with no doubt, just boom.
And I wanted that to be the experience of the people who read the comic as well, that hopefully sometime in 2010 they'd be sitting there wearing their own clothes that they'd been inspired by, and suddenly they'd be the ones who were being contacted and who were having the experiences, and it would then become the next generation of spear carriers who would come back and inspire me.
I've got some rocks over there I'm gonna perch the camera on. So if we were to define a hypersigil, it's a creation of a story that you step into and allow the momentum of the story to alter medium-term future conditions. Okay, and that is great. That is not bad magic. So, what can you do about it? How do hypersigils work for you? And do they belong in an ultimate sigil magic course? The answer to the second question is no, because the point of the sigil magic course was to deliver the least complex tech that delivers the biggest possible outcome from least complex tech. Because the thing about a hypersigil is they're very easy to do if you have a famous comic book series, because you are already writing characters that are having these wild and amazing adventures that you can step into and co-create with them. So step one of actioning hypersigils in your own magical campaigns is to have a very successful, popular graphic novel series. You see the problem, yeah? You see that the trick with hypersigils to get them to work in your life in 2025, end of 2025, beginning of 2026, is you have to jump down to the level of reality that's actually powering them. So for instance, in Grant's life at the time, he was co-creating with the conditions of his reality and stepping into different stories. What does that sound like to you? That sounds like magic. That sounds like at least my lineage of shamanism. You don't necessarily need to come with the frame that Grant did, because that's Grant's frame. And you, unless he's watching this video, you aren't him, right? So hypersigils are a thing that works for those who have a high volume of fictional creative output that allows them to put themselves in it. That can be comic book artists. So episodic is another part of it that I think is useful. Episodic writing of various descriptions, musicians, that kind of thing. That's who hypersigils work for, because they already have a life that is episodically generating stories that move toward the future. The rest of us doesn't mean we don't get to do hypersigils. It means that we actually activate the thing that makes hypersigils work differently. In the sense of we don't need to have a fucking comic book series to get it to work. We can simply step into new and better stories. I wrote a blog post or a Substack post about this pretty much exactly a year ago at the time of recording this video about there's a few things that go on in like short form social media, like main character syndrome, that are actually good. Like if you do them correctly, they're actually good. And what works, well, how a hypersigil works from a magical shamanic perspective is that you are co-creating reality. If you've done the desire module in this Ultimate Sigil Magic course, you're aware of that. You're co-creating reality. And one of the best ways to do that is to step into better, more beautiful stories and step out of the old, shitty, scarcity-based, I'm not good enough stories that many decades of trauma have poured all over us, right? So what does that look like? There's the famous story, I use it all the time. I think it's from Khalil Gibran, but I heard about it from Alberto Villoldo and Terence McKenna and so on. But Crusader knights returning home from the Crusades, and they're passing stonemasons. They pass the stonemason. The first stonemason gets asked, "What are you doing?" and says, "Oh, I'm shaving the corner of this stone." And so the knights move on to the next one. "Oh, what are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, I'm working here to feed my family during the cold season when we don't farm." That's a little bit better. And they get to the final stonemason, and they ask him, what is he doing? And he says, "I'm building a cathedral." So all three of these men are doing the same task. but they're all living in very different stories. And crucially, none of them are wrong, right? None of them are actually inaccurate, because what you don't want to do with co-creation is just make it up. Just be like, oh, I'm a billionaire. I am a 22-year-old billionaire. I'm stepping into that story, and that's how I'm co-creating reality. It's like, that's not how it's going to work. The building a cathedral, slipping into a open-ended story that points towards a more beautiful future, that's what you want to find. Now, Grant was doing that with King Mob, but because he has a career in fiction at the time, I mean, I assume he still does, but you know what I mean. He thought it was the fiction, but look at what he was doing. He was stepping into a idealized version of himself that he wasn't yet. He wanted to be the cool one, the hot one, the charming one, the one that travels the world and gets all the girls. And like, I mean, he was balding and King Mob's bald, and it's like, so there's points, and then so he shaved his head and like looked more like King Mob, wore the, again, very 90s, like black trench coat situations. He stepped into it. He co-created towards a future where, oh, I'm the guy that's writing King Mob, which you see how it's very difficult to put into words, but you understand the feeling of it. And you can be the stonemason building the cathedral. You don't actually need to have a comic book series. Like, what is the version of the near future that you are stepping into and co-creating from? Where I think this, obviously I think that's really good. I think that's the main valuable piece to sit with from a magical campaign perspective. The other bit is actually like, what do you align with? Because if you're doing fiction, if you're telling stories, we come back to that main character syndrome thing. We come back to, well, who are you going to be? Who are you going to play? Who are you going to play in this story? And this is where I think it gets very interesting. Because King Mob is, let's look at this from a Joseph Campbell art perspective, art, culture, and mythology perspective. It's a certain kind of hero, isn't it? It's not quite a Luke Skywalker hero's journey, because there's other characters in The Invisibles that do that. It's not quite Gandalf / Obi-Wan. It's more like a resplendent King Arthur, right? Like, King Mob is the boss and is the best, and it's more Leo than Sagittarius. And this is where I think it gets very interesting, right? Because we are all incorporating archetypes regardless. One day, hopefully soon, hopefully early in the new year, I will do a YouTube video explaining like the Western version of possession, because in South America, we call it incorporation. We don't say possession, and the word is less charged, but it also explains, or it also captures the nuance and complexity of what it means to house spirit beings and archetypes. Possession, and even though it's not this, comes off as very binary. Are you possessed or are you not possessed? Is your head spinning around vomiting or is it not? Yeah? So we're always doing it. This is the plot twist with, I don't love hypersigils as an idea because it's not the 90s, unfortunately, and not that you'd know from my hat, but it's a true thing that is described in a way that makes it less usefully small, yeah? Because it requires, fiction, and you just write your own story and you step into it and you do it that way. It's like, no. That is true and it works because of this underlying layer, because of this underlying co-creative layer of what building a cathedral story am I stepping into, and with whom? With whom is the archetype? Are you on a Sag hero journey, Sagittarius? Are you in a Leo moment? Which King Mob are you going to be? And you can dress, you can dress like it if you want, but now you're seeing it, right? This is coming back to like all the questions I get asked about what color pen should I use? It's like, once again, we come back to what things do you think are important versus what things are not important? And, should I dress like my Sag hero? Do you think that's as important as like finding the right being to play this story with, right? Finding the right role. I don't want to call it a role. This is the other thing I don't like about hypersigil work, is that it implies that the human, the creator telling the story of fiction is just like something they made up in their head. It's like, that's not what happens. That's absolutely not what happened with the Invisibles. The Invisibles' power is because it is is Grant's version of a deeply powerful spiritual truth, blah, blah, Gnosticism, etc., right? So I don't like the idea that, oh, you just come up with whatever and do it. It's like, that's the 90s. That's 90s chaos magic. That's not an animist theory of mind. So this is my hypersigils explanation. It is a thing that was highly successful for Grant Morrison. And that highly successful thing is powered by a truth in reality, like a universal truth, dare we say, that is available to you. This is where people get a bit lost. They're like, okay, so hypersigil. So I guess I like write a comic version of myself getting the girl and getting the job. If that's what's on your heart and that's how you vision things in the future, I'm much more of the, sit down, meditation pose, open sacred space, align with the building a cathedral version of the medium term. What is the universe calling me to step into, and what am I called, and in what way am I called to step into it? Like, what role do I play in those conditions? If you've been around Rune Soup for long enough, you'll know that one of the core engine statements is, what is yours to do? Like, you find what is mine to do, what is yours to do. That's the energy I bring to how hypersigils work. I don't really use hypersigils because it's not the 90s, sadly, and I don't have a comic book series. But one response to the prompt, what is yours to do, is visioning, like finding the building the cathedral version of the medium-term future. And that doesn't require sigils. Like, this is why the word is a bit tricksy, right? Like, I get why he put them together, 90s, and also he was doing sigil magic. So it's like, oh, I'm creating like a vision with my pen of the future. So that's like a sigil, but it's hyper because I'm stepping into it, right? You get it? Find your way into the level of reality for how that works, yeah? Another one of those power statements is way of thinking, not product of thought. The way of thinking is co-creation. The product of thought in Grant's case was a highly successful visioning of himself and his main character having like a fun globe-trotting life. But don't think, oh, I guess I better learn to draw so I can draw a comic book version of me. Like, no. That's the product of thought, the way of thinking. How do I co-create? And truly, especially this time of year, give yourself some moments somewhere in nature. Not here, I'm busy. I want this, find another one. 10 or 15 minutes. Drop the year that's gone and find that building a cathedral version of the things that you know you have to / get to do next year. Like, I suppose I'm going to go back to work and seeing my family and so on. But how am I showing up to that, and in what form? And as I go back to a job that isn't a dream job necessarily, what is the story of that? Am I just there to do a task that they've paid me to do? Am I just there to am I just there to get money for my family? Or am I there to generate and contain energy that I use to transform my life into what I declare it shall be by the end of 2026? For me, that's hypersigils, right? Like, hypersigils work because of all that hermetic, new thought, Neville Goddard, Lynn McTaggart, co-creative capacities that the human soul has while we're in bodies and when we're not. So that's your bonus module. That's how hypersigils work. That's where the term comes from. You are certainly welcome to create yourself a comic. Feel free to includes a hilarious and handsome Australian wizard in a white boy bucket hat in there somewhere. And if you need to go deeper on the co-creative visioning aspect, jump back to the desire module of this course and take notes with the benefits of the hypersigil hindsight.